Good day, all. Tom Kofer with OnPoint Consulting. Today, we are very excited to be sharing the individual recorded learning sessions from our highly successful and free OnPoint Sage 300 web conference that was attended by Sage users from all over the country. We had 10 great web learning sessions over 2 days that were extremely well attended and wanted to pass those on to you as part of our ongoing commitment to Sage 300 CRE users around the country. We thank you for your support. This session addresses payroll tips and tricks best practices. Some of the key learning objectives in this session was to learn specific tips and tricks within the payroll module that our pros and senior folks use to really help our customers gain greater use and efficiency in payroll. We showed folks how to correctly set up pays, deductions, and pay groups to really take advantage of the power in the payroll system, which is one of the best construction payroll applications I've ever seen. We were able to deliver this successful webinar series because of our really deep pool of consultants, trainers, software developers, custom developers, and in addition to our support, training, and consulting services, we also provide Sage 300 customers with optimization and business process reviews. These are two specific processes to help Sage customers determine if Sage can be enhanced and you can continue to use it, or if it should be replaced. You know, we've helped hundreds of Sage 300 CR users over the past 30 years and are really here to help you gain the maximum use of your software and extend the life of your investment any and everywhere possible. We at OnPoint Consulting are here to help. So if you review this video, you find it helpful, please like and share us on Facebook or LinkedIn. And you can also find us at onpoint-software.com if you have any questions or topics you'd like to discuss. Thank you and enjoy the session with our compliments, and stay well, friends.
So, my name is Linda Whitener, and I'm a consultant with OnPoint. And just like to say, I appreciate you coming and attending the session, or even if you've been at the previous sessions. The learning objectives on this is just some miscellaneous tips and tricks specifically for the payroll module. And so I tried to organize them in like setup and then task related, but we're just kind of bouncing around through the software and just going over some miscellaneous items. So I hope you enjoy. So the first one is setting up the pays and deductions and the pay groups correctly. So as far as with the pays, there is the pay types there. The drop down box is regular, overtime, other, reimbursement, accrual, and the cash fringe. So usually the regular and overtime overtime specifically is for the time and a half, the double time. But even the regular, there's so many times when I see that somebody put vacation in there or something, some other kind of pay ID like that. It would be best for regular to be reserved for the when they were actually there working, and anything else would go into other, whether it be like a bonus, vacation, some other kind of miscellaneous type pays. But if they were not there working, then don't classify it as regular. The expense account is based on the hierarchy, and also, do you really want an expense account there? So if you want it to pull the expense account by the pay itself, then yes, then you want it there. But in the hierarchy, some people on the pay group, for a certain group, they say that they want it all to go to this expense account for that group, like maybe project managers or administrative staff. They might have pay groups set up for that, and with the account number put there. But if they have it on the pay setup, then it will never get to the pay group to look for it there, because and you can look under the help of the hierarchy, and it will tell you where it stops first, and if it finds one, then it stops looking. So this is the first stop for the expense account. But what you do not want here is a cost of sales account number, because this is expense account, meaning G&A expense account. If you use this pay ID for charging it to the job, then it will get that expense account information from the job cost area. So on the exempt status, especially on the pays, just be very careful there, because most time pays are not exempt from taxes. If you are paying them for mileage, and you don't want it taxed or any kind of thing like that, it would be classified as a reimbursement type of a pay, and then therefore it is not taxed. But if it's a regular or an other on a pay, it's usually not tax exempt. For deductions, the question of retain year-to-date totals at close year, if it's something like a loan or something that carries a balance, that if they didn't finish paying something off the previous year, you want that to carry forward so that they don't like start over and the system think that they haven't paid anything for it. So on a loan type thing, yes, you do want it to retain year-to-date totals at close year. If it is anything that goes on to their W-2, definitely that's a no, because when it's doing the W-2s, it's looking at the totals in those buckets. And so you don't want it to bring forward anything from previous years. It needs to be cleared out and only be something for this year. Also, choose the correct calculation method, where on the setup there it has gross pay, but these are all of the calculation methods. I mean, it could be a flat amount, could be based on regular hours or total hours, and it be a percentage of that. So just use the deduction correctly, and if it's anything off of pay, it's always a percentage. If it's the hours, then it could be a rate. And once you set up a deduction, then that you don't want to be changing that calculation method. The exempt status, just be very sure about these. I always advise people, even though 401k, you know, most time it's federal withholding and state withholding, that it is not subject to those taxes. But always verify with your third-party administrator on a 401k or on your health insurance deductions. Have them tell you it is not subject to these taxes, and have them be very specific about that. The pay groups, most companies can get by with one or two pay groups because you do process payroll by those pay groups, and so you want to keep it to a minimum. But what could be a need for more pay groups? It's when you have a different frequency of pay. If some get paid weekly, other ones are bi-weekly. If you're retrieving prefixes and you're getting the prefix from that pay group, or as we were talking about with the setting up the pay, if it's retrieving expense accounts from the pay group, and they're going to be different expense accounts, then you want to set up different pay groups. And then especially if the bank account is different, because that's one place that most people forget when they switch banks, and they have where it's getting the bank account from is the pay group. So when you're in between processing from one bank account and then the next week you're going to be processing out of a different one, then you need to change the bank account on that pay group, or you're going to go process payroll and want to print checks for a particular bank account, and it says nothing to print. And then you have to go change each check record to change the bank account that it's coming out of. So using the pays and the deductions correctly, or using them to have them help you, is using the frequency. A lot of times I see that things are just set up, everything is by check, which that's not entirely true, because if you have a medical deduction, that might be a weekly amount. And so you want to use that frequency as weekly, because if you're processing a special, maybe like a bonus run, or just a secondary check, you left off some hours, but he has already paid the medical deduction. Well, you don't want to take it again. So when you go to process your payroll, if it's on that special run, don't click weekly, and it will automatically leave off the medical deduction. It only processes things that are by check. So, 401k, you're thinking, well, why is that by check? Because when it is based on gross pay, every single check that they get, it needs to be calculated on. So that would be one of the deductions that needs to be calculated on every single check that they get. But your child support, health insurance, any other kind of deductions, those are usually based on a weekly frequency. Okay, so going in and talking about setting up a workers' comp table for owners controlled insurance. So in payroll, under setup and other, cost code work comp table, you see this table. If you have it set up one, and it's always called usually WC, and this is the one, the way that they have it set up, it changes the work comp code by the cost code that it was worked on. Some people don't even need that. They just use what's in the person's master file. But if you have owners controlled on here, if you see, look at the first line, it's 8 to 8999 and it's 5135. So 5135 is the normal work comp code. But this one is 5135.99. So 99 meaning the OSIP, and OSIP is you are not responsible for any insurance on it, work comp or general liability. So then this OSIP work comp table would be set up on the job for the job that is underneath that owner's controlled program. And you can do the same thing for ROSIP and CSIP, and I just assign 98 and 97 to them. So it would be, instead of the 99 here, you'd have 98 or 97. And then the rates on those, so on OSIP, it would have a rate in the workers' comp fringe table of 0.0001 because it has to have something. And so that rounds to 0. So because if you have a code here, it's got to go find it somewhere. And then if you have a ROSIP or CSIP, then set up the rates accordingly in that workers' comp table with these workers' comp codes on them. And then I think my next slide. Yeah, so this one right here on the workers' comp group, this says OSIP. So it's going to look for everything on the OSIP workers' comp table. If it's just a regular one and you want it to flip by the cost code and you're paying the workers' comp on it, then you'd have just that WC one there. But this one is in job cost setup jobs, and it's the scope, payroll, and equipment tab is where you're at. And that's where you would put that workers' comp group on there. But what you get out of setting it up that way is, even though on an OSIP one, you are not responsible for any of the insurance on that, but they still want you to give them the report of where they worked under what work comp code that they worked on. So you would still get your full range of workers' comp reports out of this, but just they would have the 99, the 98, the 97, but it would still have the description. So you just have to print that out and send them that. And not have to do any added work. So now over to general liability. If your general liability is based on payroll, then set it up as a fringe. And instead of the fringe being called WC, like the work comp is, set it up as GL. And then it also uses the work comp table. I think I have a screenshot on the next one. It's set up exactly the same as the work comp fringe, except the calculation method is gross pay. And of course, that's just over the years, that's what most of them are, but you definitely want to verify that with your insurance company. And then also the rate for GL is usually per $1,000. Again, verify that. When you put rates in the table, in that workers' comp table, that automatically understands that it's per 100. So to fix that rate to be able to work in that table, you just move the decimal one place to the left. And then it would be per $100 of payroll. And let me see. Yeah. So here is the fringe, general liability, and taking it to the liability and the expense accounts. And then if it goes to a job, but it uses a table. So then here, the calculation method is gross pay. And then what we put in here, it is asking for a workers' comp code. So when anybody works on 5606 as an executive supervisor, on the WC table, it gets their real workers' comp, but over here it pulls the general liability. Now I know when you look at your general liability policy, it has like these numbers 95 or 915 something. It's a 5-digit code, but they do correspond to a 4-digit work comp code. So you need to correlate those and say, okay, this 5-digit one is the same thing as 5606, and put that in here because it can't do the 2 different codes. It all has to be based off of a workers' comp code. And to get to this table, of course, when you're on this first setup screen, there's that little button there called table that gets you to this area. Also, another thing that can be set up as a fringe is health insurance, and that's for the company paid portion. So you say, why do I need to do that? I just charge it to G&A, and then that's where I have that bill going. But this would cost it out to the jobs. You want to trying to get as much stuff costed out to the jobs as possible. That this would do it, setting it up as a fringe. So then you have both the employee portion and this company paid portion. Both of them together should equal the total bill. And then it makes it easy when you're going to pay that bill. You just take the entire thing to that liability account and the coding is done. Also, the more information that they're wanting on the W-2s now, they want to know how much the company paid for health insurance. And so this gives you something that you can say, put this fringe in this amount, or, within a formula, adding multiple fringes together if you need to. But you have something out there that can be added to the W-2s. So default accounts in Sage, there's multiple places for it, but there's the one area in the settings, in the payroll settings, for the default accounts in payroll. But whenever you see a field that's calling for default accounts, don't put a real account there, because then you'll never know if it's going to that default account as its last resort to pull the information, because it couldn't find it any place, so it's gone down to the last resort and having to pull it from there. So like this one here, this is from the sample data, and they had real accounts here. So, but for me, like the deduct tax fringe liability account, I always like to use the 99, at the end of it, because it kind of draws your attention to it more. So it'd be like 10-2199. For the earnings and the burden, if you want to put those in one account, you can, and it would be 6999. It would be called earnings and burden default account. So if you're looking at a trial balance and account inquiry or a financial statement, and you see these two accounts show up and they have something in them, then there's some detail in there that it had to go to its last place that it could look to find the account for it. So something before that wasn't set up correctly. So have there been any questions so far, Lori?
So far, Linda, there are no questions.
Okay, thank you. So child support formula. This one gets a little bit more detailed. So with child support, most of the time, you cannot take in child support, all of them added together, to be more than 50% of net income. So if the check is short, if there was a lot of rain days, they just couldn't work as much as usual. By setting it up and using the formula, it will automatically prorate all of the child supports for that employee proportionately. So it's not going to just take, reduce one of them. It's going to look to see what percentage each one of them are, and then take that percentage and reduce it. So each one gets reduced proportionately. And we can, because this is more involved, we can definitely help you set this up. Just make an appointment with us and we'll be glad to help you. But on the next slides, I'm going to give you the screenshots of the formulas on how they're set up. So if you can figure it out and do it on your own, more power to you. But there are 5 formulas, and it could be more. What we've done is, this is a maximum of 3 different child support writs for one employee. So if somebody has 4 or 5, then we just need to add some more formulas out there. And you will be getting a copy of this presentation. So like here is the first one, the number 1 and number 2. And if you're going to do it yourself, name them exactly this, because then they're pulled up into the other formulas. And then I always name my child support deductions CS1, CS2, and CS3. And then if there was 4 and 5. So if you already have child support deductions, you might have to change these IDs to match what yours is. So these are the first 2 formulas to set up. And then these here, this 1, 2, and then on the next tab, there's a third one. These formulas on your child support 1, it'll be based on a formula, and you actually put this formula in there. And this child support 2 amount, you actually put that in your second child support formula setup. And then here's number 3. So, if you know anything on the report design or whatever, if these help you at all. But again, we're more than happy to help you set this up. And then we can also test it and just make sure that it is working correctly. But saves a lot of time in having to go back through and check for anybody that might have gone over the 50%. Okay, so DOL WH-347. I mean, if I was able to talk to you, does anybody know what this report is? And I have it in the fine print down here. It's certified reports. So I don't know if a lot of people know this, but they can be found in the task of federal e-file. And so when we go over in the software, I will show you that. And if you type in the questions, if there's, I'm looking at the time, so that we have enough time, I'll be happy to show you anything else in there. But they're a pretty nice looking report. They look more official report than printing the one off of the reports menu. So also within Atrix, because that certified report that we were just talking about, that's Atrix, and then this here is also Atrix. And if you have multiple payroll data folders with the same federal tax ID number, so you might have one for salaried people and one for hourly people or whatever that you want to keep them separate. You can merge those when processing your federal and state quarterlies and W-2s through Atrix. And it's not hard to do, but it's just a little bit hard to explain, and we can't deep dive it here. So be happy to meet with you and run through even a live quarterly when you're producing your quarterly reports to show you how to bring those together if you need help with that. Generating accruals. So if you have to make entries at the end of whether you do it monthly, quarterly, or at the end of the year, and that payroll is not going to post until the next year. So like say you have 5 days of December that's in the period ending date that ends in the next year, it won't post until then. So usually CPAs, they want you to estimate how much payroll you have. Well, there's an easy way to do it, and that's using the generate accruals. So you want to, on that last pay period, enter all the time up until the end of the month or the quarter or the year, whatever you're at, and not enter anything for the going into the next month. You want to then use the generate accrual task, and you enter the accounting date for the end of the month. And so then that has the accrual done, and then you can continue entering the rest of your time for that pay period. When you post those payroll checks, the accrual will automatically reverse itself when the checks are posted. So it's the entry would be a debit to the expense accounts or the jobs, and it would say generate accrual. And then the credit side would be whatever account you have in the PR settings as your accrual account. And then it would reverse at the end, at the next month, whenever that pay period is posted, either if it's by the period ending date as accounting date or the check date, if that's your accounting date. So automatic overtime, to use it or not to use it. So in setting up automatic overtime, this is the setup screen. It can only do one regular pay ID. And so in this instance, it's REG, and it says level 1, anything over 40 hours a week, change it to overtime. If they go to 45 hours, then change it to double time. Or you could have on this table the day, and if it was a Saturday, you could say it's overtime, or if it's a Sunday, it's double time. But having automatic overtime set up, you can enter all of the time as regular, especially when you have people working on different jobs and you're trying to gather the information for this one employee, or even, each of the employees, to figure out, okay, did he work over 40 hours? between all of the jobs, and then having to figure out, okay, which one was he on last, and changing it to overtime. This does it for you. You don't have to worry about that, but just enter your time from the first day on the pay cycle in order to the last day of the pay cycle. Because what it does, it starts at the end and changes it over to overtime until there's 40 regular hours, and then the rest of it has changed to overtime. If you use weighted average overtime, you cannot use this because this regular pay ID here cannot, or the overtime pay IDs cannot be a weighted average overtime. But for the most part, I mean, this is pretty straightforward, and it's the manual stuff that people go through anyhow. And so if they enter things in order, the system will do it for you. Importing time. So, if your employees fill out a spreadsheet or just even on a sheet of paper, and you enter from that, you might import the time. I know that people use a lot of third-party softwares to gather their time, but a smaller shop might not, have that fancy stuff. But if the employees fill out like spreadsheets that are designed so that it will easily convert to be in the format that you need to import it, then you can, gather all these timesheets and put them on one spreadsheet and import them. Then you're not having to re-enter and make sure that everything is in balance what they said. I mean, you're still going to verify this stuff, but trying to go more to a spreadsheet, and then you can import the time. In the PR settings, there's a little checkbox that says write voided checks to the new file. Some people do that, some people don't. The one place that it is helpful is that if you wrote a check last week, you paid the taxes on it, you've turned it in on the EFTPS and all, and then it gets voided in this pay cycle, and then you're going to rewrite it for a different amount. Instead of having to keep up with, well, how much taxes did I pay towards that check, because you need to get credit back for those this week, if you simply have it write voided checks to the new file, and it'll store that information in there. So you have this new file that you're working up this week, and after checks have been written and just before you're ready to post, that you know that everything is good, nobody came back, with checks that were wrong, and you get ready to post that, just before you post, run whatever your favorite report is for paying your 941 taxes, run that report, then post that new file. Because then in that new file is where it gave you that credit. So you'll be paying the right amount. So you do that week after week. Everything accumulates in this new file. Just before you're ready to post, run that, and then post. Don't make any more changes to it, because that's what you're basing your 941 payment off of. And if you do that week in and week out, let's say even you have one check you have to get out, and then you need to post it, then even if there's just one check in there, you run your report and then you post that one check and pay that 941 taxes. Okay, so we have maybe about 10 minutes. So was there any questions, Lori, that came up?
Yes, Linda, we do have a couple of questions. The
Okay.
first question is, will there be a report written for certified payrolls to be uploaded into LCP Tracker?
I would have to check. I haven't kept up with the latest on the certified report services like that, but I will find out and let you know.
And the second question is, I'd really like to set up the OT this way in my version, but yours is a lot older. How can I get help with this? Auto-calculated OT, that is.
I'll help you. I don't believe that has changed that much, the setup screens and stuff. But no, if they just contact us, put in a ticket, and we'll be glad to help you with setting it up.
And she said, thank you. Those are the only
Okay.
two questions.
Okay. So I was, in the little bit of time left, I was going to go over to the software here, and under the tab, this is the certified reports, printing them out. Under the federal e-file and reporting, I'm not going to update it right now. So on there, because there's the 2019, then it goes into the few 20 stuff that's there, but this one right here, and I don't know what the period ending dates are. Again, this is sample data, so let me check. Come on.
And Linda, I just want to, excuse me, I just wanted to let you know that we have 10 minutes left.
Okay, thank you. Just checking here to see what one of the period ending dates. We'll do 5/31/13. Okay, so at least there was one job out there. And then it asks you if you're weekly or bi-weekly. Okay. This is part of the little thing where it asks you about multiple companies and stuff. Oh, come on. Excuse me just a second. It's wanting some numbers out there. Okay, so there is one of the certified reports out of Atrix. So it looks a little bit more official than the ones that come off of the reports menu. But payroll number that be held in the job and stuff, but yeah. So a lot of people don't know, that that's out there, but you would continue on, get your copy, get the state copy. And, but I just thought I'd let y'all know that those are underneath there. But I will check into the certified report services about the LCP tracker. Okay. So no more questions came in, Lori? Just checking one last time.
Nope, no more questions.
Okay. Well, with that, then we just learned some miscellaneous tips and tricks specifically for the payroll module. And you're all done. And good job. And I'll turn it back over to Barclay.
Awesome. Thank you, Linda. And thank you again all for being here. And as I've mentioned in previous sessions, we really do want your feedback so that we can continue to develop content that's relevant for you. Also, additional resources on our website are free Sage 300 CRE procedure guides, which are very popular, as well as previously recorded webinars and videos. And if you think of additional questions that you weren't able to ask during the session, you can email us at clientcare@onpoint-software.com. And everybody have a good afternoon and a good lunch break, and hope to see some of you back this afternoon.